My name is William Zimmer. Today, for this final speech of this winter semester speech class, I am going to discuss the discernment within the mutual love relationship with God. Recently, I was looking for a topic for this speech, and I wanted to explore the relationship with God. Our professor wanted me to narrow down my topic, which beginning was the broad subject of exploring a faith-based relationships with God, which, as it turns out, is a very complicated subject. I was intrigued by a journal article Professor Zhang sent to me titled Discernment Within a Mutual Love Relationship with God, written by Edward Collins Vack. I had a deep focus on the word discernment, which could not have been the first time I had heard this word. As it turns out, it was. And I had no understanding of what the word meant. And therefore, I had very little understanding what a relationship with God meant. So what is discernment? And what does this mean with a mutual relationship with God that Vack wrote about? That'll be my focus today. So let's begin this subject by defining what the word discernment exactly is. A simple Google search gives two definitions. The first is discernment, the ability to judge. The second definition listed has in parentheses, in Christian context, perception in the absence of judgment with a view to obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding. This is much more of a useful definition for our subject. I want to explore this just a little bit further. I'm going to use Christianity.com's definition, which narrows our understanding a little bit further. In its simplest definition, discernment is nothing more than the ability to decide between truth and error, right and wrong. Discernment is the process of making careful distinctions in our thinking about truth. In other words, the ability to think with discernment is synonymous with an ability to think biblically. Now that narrows it down a little bit more. What does this mean with a relationship with God? We're going to explore that a little bit further. To understand a relationship with God, we're going to, of course, talk about love. Love is in any relationship. There are three types of love. There's agape, eros, and philia. And all three have very different aspects of a relationship with God or loving God. Agape, in short, is generally considered the only proper Christian love, which can be summed up as an obedience to a God or to God, faithful service from servant to Lord. Eros love is focused around how God can fulfill us. In quotes, this eros is a genuine love and effective affirmation, but is conditional on whether the beloved enhances our self. End quote. Vack considers filial love to be central to his essay and locates agape and eros within a mutual love relationship between God and ourselves. So he combines philia with the other two. What is filial love? Filial love is a mutual communion of the sort that occurs in friendships. Vack proposes that philia should be the matrix of Christian discernment. So back to discernment, what does that mean? That is to judge. To judge, in this case, a relationship with God. How do we do that? How do we discern ourselves in a relationship with God? Vack claims that philia is our best practice. There are 5 steps to this, and it all is about mutuality. So, for philia, further on this definition, members love one another. The second part, what is important to the beloved becomes important to the other. Third, members of filial relationship allow themselves to be loved. Fourth, God, with whom we have involved in a mutual love, can be experienced as interiorly active in us, as loving as into existence and found our own fullness. What does that mean? And that's where we get into the central part of what he's talking about with this discernment in a mutual love relationship with God. It is most central that both parties acts out and in terms of this mutual relationship. So now we're getting into the word mutual. They act to promote and sustain the relationship and its members. Christians live out this relationship. The question is not what does God want or what is good for me, but what should we, God and I, do? God is primary, but we have a contribution to make to this development and fulfillment. To conclude, we need to understand how discernment plays into all this and how it is the main focus. And there's a lot of words here that I had to look up and the theological statements that I didn't have a great understanding of that I'm trying to convey here today to you. But in short, to have that mutual love relationship, we need to understand filial love and what that is. The filial relationship allows for the collective discernment between an individual and God. So that's you and God making decisions together, or you making decisions with God on your mind. Not as servant and Lord, but as someone who deeply cares about you. Reaching back to those 5 statements. God's willingness to be a part of us is wishing to be in us, is the mutual love. Religious discernment begs the question, then, how will this fit my relationship with God? We begin to discern and make choices that benefit the mutual love relationship. We cooperate with God's love and action in the world. Now, to conclude this topic, and I hope you're still with me, I want to read the closing statement of the essay. In the theology of discernment proposed here, we select among options by asking whether they effectively fit the friendship we have with God within the world. This world consists of all those creatures, including ourselves, to which we are related and for which we share some responsibility. As an enactment of this relationship, we cooperate with God's love and action in this world. Since God loves us, God also wants us to foster our love and action. When we mutually act with God, we grow in God intimacy. The outgoing quality of this love is experienced as entering into God's life. The incoming quality is experienced as God in us affirming us. These feelings of intimacy are part of the attunement that occurs in philia. This philia is the matrix of discernment. Now, I focused solely on this essay written by Edward Collins Vasek. The title is Discernment Within a Mutual Love Relationship with God, a New Theological Foundation. Now, it's a 30-page essay, and I highly recommend everybody to further their understanding of the possibilities of this loving relationship with God and how, as Christians, we can exist in a different relationship, something I'd never heard of. Thank you for your time. That's all I have today.